So it seems California is in some more trouble when it comes to their budget, because apparently they're about $5 billion above what the Governor Gavin Newsom thought it was going to be. And I'm gonna tell you what, I just have a strong feeling they're going to find a way to blame this on the president. Welcome back, YouTube. It's your host, Bruce GNT, and we're here to talk about the budget deficit that's going on in California. So, as you all know, California is a much larger state than others. So, obviously, when it comes to what they produce, their revenue, everything like that, it's going to be much larger. What can happen, has been happening for the past few years now, is that they're in a budget deficit. And the budget deficit is nothing to sneeze at. So let's jump right in.
And California is facing a major budget deficit next year. The California Legislative Analyst Office is predicting a budget shortfall of almost $18 billion. ABC 10's Jeannie Nguyen is here to explain where most of the money is being spent.
Alex, the Department of Finance says the estimate is not off, and it's something the state has been expecting leading into the next year. The state blames the deficit on a number of things like Trump administration cuts and spending on education, and says this will be a priority for the governor and the legislature in the new year.
The legislative analyst has highlighted a number of the challenges that we and the governor have underscored throughout 2025.
The challenge is a potential $18 billion deficit for the state's budget next year. In a new report, the Legislative Analyst Office predicts the shortfall will be $5 billion larger than Governor Gavin Newsom initially expected. H.D. Palmer with the Department of Finance says there are a number of factors that contribute to this number, like Proposition 98 that guarantees minimum funding for K-12 schools and community colleges. The Trump administration also has cut federal funding over the past year.
Things like record federal uncertainty, things like volatility in the stock markets, things like increasing pressures from cost and caseload in some of the state's major programs, such as Medi-Cal, which provides healthcare services to roughly 1 out of every 3 Californians.
So I want to stop it right there, because they spoke about Trump cutting federal funding. One of the reasons why Trump cut federal funding, which is not something I personally agree with, is because California is doing things that they don't want them to do, right? The federal government. And one of those things is Medi-Cal, just like what he brought up. It provides 1 in 3 Californians with medical insurance. So I did a little bit of research. I did a little bit of a deep dive, because I kept hearing people say that California is giving a lot to illegal migrants. They're making it so that they could get health insurance and everything like that. And I was like, okay, let me look into this and make sure. When I looked it up, when it came to Medi-Cal, they did. That's not a lie. And it says it on their website as well. You could go look it up yourself. I might even have a screenshot. They removed the barriers, the parameters of immigration status to get Medi-Cal. So when people jump up and they say places like California are providing medical services for illegal migrants, not just the residents of California, which is a strain on their budget, on their money, they're not lying. So I may not agree with withholding federal funding from California, but you can't sit in my face and say, well, we're not doing this, and you remove the requirement to be a legal citizen within your state, and then you have all these people that are using resources, which doesn't matter how you look at it, they're not supposed to be there because they're here illegally. That is kind of crazy. There are also other reasons as to why their budget is so inflated, and we'll get to that later.
Increasing deficit, the LAO also adds that the state's revenues have increased because taxes from high-income earners and stock market growth.
From July through October, our revenues are running roughly $6 billion ahead of where we projected we were going to be when the Budget Act was passed.
Revenues will not make up for how much the state is spending.
Unfortunately, state spending is also growing commensurately. But also that doesn't address the long-term structural imbalance between revenues and expenditures of the state.
Republican State Senator Roger Nilo says the focus needs to be on pinpointing what needs to be cut.
We need to take a hard look at programs that were established, particularly in those years when we had surpluses, to assess whether they're accomplishing what was intended to accomplish when they were set up. And also, importantly, their sustainability, because they could be perhaps effective, but maybe we just can't afford the ongoing increases.
Governor Gavin Newsom is expected to present his budget proposal in January and then a revision to the budget in May. Alex.
That is part of the reason. And in this next video, because we're going to go over what Gavin Newsom has suggested, not his budget, but what he has suggested to do to cut down on the spending to help with the deficit for California. And it is a doozy of a suggestion. But before we get into that, right, California has the same issue that Chicago has and issues that I believe other cities and states have. they were getting a lot of federal funding from the government during the COVID years, right? And when that was happening, it inflated their budget, made it seem like they were operating at a surplus. And what happened is that, just like with regular people, there's lifestyle inflation. California started spending like they made that amount of money on a consistent basis when they didn't. So when the federal government stopped giving money to states and cities for COVID and everything like that, COVID relief, California didn't bring back its spending. It continued spending like it was at COVID levels. So now you have an overinflated budget due to the injection of money from the federal government during COVID, and now they have to find a way to bring it on back. But now for this next video, we're going to go over what Gavin Newsom is suggesting, and I'm going to tell you what, I'm not a fan.
California has a budget problem. The Legislative Analyst Office is predicting a gloomy outlook for next year because too much money is being spent and not enough is coming in. How much? Well, an $18 billion problem next year and $35 billion deficit the following year. The governor has some answers to right the state's financial ship. They're controversial, painful, or a perfect answer. That's for you to decide. Tonight, the group Californians United for a Responsible Budget say the perfect answer is simple: close California prisons. Each year, California pays $127,800 for every person whose address is a state prison. That's according to the Legislative Analyst Office. Multiply that by all incarcerated in our state. The most recent figure from the Public Policy Institute is 94,000 people in 2023. Pull out the calculator. The number is not only dizzying about how much of the state budget goes toward corrections, it's also no longer making sense to Governor Newsom, who's been talking about a transformation. While at San Quentin Rehabilitation Center back in March, he said the state has failed for far too long.
You've been the governor for the past almost 6 years at this point. How are you saying that the state has failed for far too long? You've been running the state. That's your failure. Like, what does that mean? He didn't just get, y'all do know he didn't just get in. He got reelected in 2022. How can he say that the state has failed for far too long when it's been him at the helm? You failed for far too long. And this is the shit I talk about, right? Gavin Newsom could stand in people's faces and tell y'all that, but because y'all are so bedazzled by him, y'all just go, it's fantastic, he's telling the truth. Yeah, motherfucker, he's running it. It's him. That's the part that I don't get. To get back to the issue at hand, I don't know about anybody else, right? I've been to California one time, and I've never lived in the heart of California. But let me just ask, with everything that goes on with California, and I mean all parts of it, meaning from top to bottom, do you think it's a wise idea to close any prisons? You know what I'm saying? I'm not advocating for more prisons. I'm not even advocating for the prison industrial complex, because that's a whole can of worms. California, certain parts of California have a legit crime problem. Closing state prisons doesn't seem like the answer. You know what I'm saying? How about you cut back on spending in other parts within your government? You know what I'm saying? You know what's crazy? And I'm gonna touch back on this later. These people never talk about cutting on their paychecks or how much they get paid. You know what I'm saying? They never do that. They never look at how much they get paid when it comes to cutting spending. They always look at other things that, in my personal opinion, are greatly needed. Food for thought.
2/3 of folks, the senator says, coming out of the prison every single year, or at least within 3 years, violate some probation order or commit another damn crime. I mean, 2/3? And we perpetuate that system, and we call that system somehow public safety oriented? Where's the public safety in that?
Rehabilitation has long been brought up as an answer to that. Help the incarcerated through rehabilitation, education, and training, and help the state budget, as Ipyani Lockhart suggests. He's a faith organizer with the Interfaith Movement for Human Integrity.
The cost that it costs to incarcerate a healthy individual is well over $130,000 per year. In comparison, to house a family of four, it will cost less than $40,000 per year, right? So why is it that we continue to invest in systems that are not enriching our community, but more so harming our community?
But crime is hurting our communities.
That brother's not wrong. Why invest in something that is not yielding tangible results? But with that being said, two things. Why is it that it's so much for California when it comes to how much they're spending on their inmate per inmate? Because it's like $127,000 per inmate. That's insane. Other states don't operate like that. So what is California doing? Is what's going on with California that they're operating at such like a high amount? Because I think the average for other states is around, I think, $40,000 to $60,000. I have it up on the screen, but that just doesn't make any sense to me. What is California doing that other states aren't? Because California's up there, Vermont as well, and I want to say Maryland, all blue states. But you know what I'm saying? Like what are they doing that their amount for housing inmates is so much? We need to look into that. Two, okay, I'm all for rehabilitation, I'm all for education, I'm all for training. But what's the difference in price, which I'm pretty sure is not going to be $127,000 per person, but still, that's still money being used. And then not only that as well, what's the requirement after that? So you're telling me after they get out, and per his numbers, I'm not sure if it's true, but per his numbers, he said every 2 out of 3 people after they get out, they reoffend and they'll break probation. Okay, cool. What's going to stop them from doing so when they go through this training rehabilitation process? You know, are you going to make it mandatory? Like, okay, you get out and you have to do rehabilitation, you have to do education, you have to do training. How do you enforce that? And then, okay, cool. Let's just say that is the case and they go through all that and they still reoffend. Because to say that the reason why these people are doing these crimes is because they don't have the proper training, they don't have proper education, I don't think that's the correct way to go about it. Because unless you've captured every single last person that's committed a crime within your state and then diagnose why they committed a crime, we can't just sit here and say, okay, if we do these 3 steps, rehabilitation, education, and training, we get to stem how often they're out here just committing crimes. It sounds convoluted, and follow me if you can, but I don't believe that personally. But yeah, how do you enforce that if that's something that you want to enact? How much it's going to cost? And then not only that, can we ensure that that's going to lead to people not reoffending? But just like what was said before I cut it off, yeah, crime is a problem. It is a problem. So closing prisons does not seem like the solution, personally.
So voters said in overwhelmingly passing Proposition 36 last year, holding people accountable for their crimes.
We should be spending money on safety, on affordability, and on reducing the cost of living by getting government out of the way, not by shutting down essential services.
The governor and his large team on this prison closure plan call rehabilitation services essential, not incarceration.
Why are we almost paying $500,000 to incarcerate a senior that might be battling cancer when we could invest that money in our community to prevent people going to incarceration? More importantly, giving them the skill sets to be contributing members of our community, which will be beneficial to all of us as Californians and more importantly, as Americans.
I hate when they come up with those like hyper-specific scenarios. Well, why are we doing this when there's a senior that's like however old that has cancer? No. That's not the majority of people that's in prisons. We all know that. We're talking about the average Joe within the mid-20s, early 30s that's just out committing crimes. And like I said before, there is nothing suggesting that if this person had training or whatever have you, that they would just not commit crimes. There's nothing suggesting that. You know what I'm saying? Unless I'm wrong, let me know. I'm all for reinvesting money back into the community. Cool. But we have to understand that there's some people out there that just don't give a damn. It's not about them not having opportunity. They just commit crimes because they want to commit crimes. You know what I'm saying? For instance, that shooting that happened, I want to say in Stockton, California, right? Are you telling me the reason that person did that was because they didn't have proper education and they didn't have job opportunity? No, because some people are just evil. That's it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about that. There's some people out there that just want to cause destruction. You know, and obviously I know they're not going to close all state prisons, but even still, you have a crime problem in your state, especially in certain cities, and your idea is to close prisons to save on money. I personally don't think that's the way.
Governor Newsom says the state can save about $150 million every year when a prison is closed, which is part of his plan to close a $12 billion deficit. These have already been closed or deactivated in the last few years. prisons. Now, with Californians United for a Responsible Budget calling for more prison closures in the state of California because of significant budget deficits projected for the next several years. Now, we did reach out to the Vera Institute of Justice for a comment, asking what is the most responsible way to determine whether prison closures are necessary, and if so, what's the best way to work with the communities potentially impacted by a prison closure? And here is the written statement we received tonight. Decision makers should use data to drive prison closures. Given California's climate risk zones, data used to guide closures should be broad, holding town halls to give these communities a voice before deciding to close prisons gives a decision maker a broader view of the impact communities will face and guides where cost savings can be invested. That provides a lot of opportunities to invest a community's safety.
Okay, yeah, I don't want to hear the rest of that. Look, the way they want to go about that, that's not a bad way. I can respect that. But we also have to realize and remember that a great deal of people are not involved in the community as we would like them to be. We see it in voter turnout all the time. Gavin Newsom has been the governor for almost 6 years at this point. If you're telling me, right, that the only way he can see, or one of the many ways he can see to save money for the state, is to close prisons, meaning he's looked at the entire budget for the state and he's looked at every possible avenue, and the only waste he sees is with the prisons, I call bullshit. I call bullshit. There's no way you're looking at all of California being like, you know what, prison's the best option. No, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. I think they should have someone like with EY when they went through Chicago and everything like that. They should have that done for like certain parts of California, just all of California. However it could get done, and look at the whole budget as a whole, because I don't trust that. If they try this out and it works, sure. If they try it out and it doesn't turn out well, hopefully no one has to really pay the price. Yeah, I voted for him. Well, you guys already know, Drew. That's it for this video. If you enjoyed it, leave a like. Comment down below. Tell me your thoughts. Do you feel like this is an appropriate plan? Do you feel like this is going to really save California money, or this is just another way for them to divert, to not address the real problems, I should say? You know, let me know in the comments down below. That's it for now. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.